BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Hello, I'm Kirsty Young. Welcome to Young Again, the podcast that asks fascinating people, what advice would you give your younger self? Today I am joined by a rock star whose passion for poetry fueled his songwriting, whilst his passion for drugs fueled his tabloid fame. Over a quarter of a century after he started the Libertines, the band remained together, rock and roll survivors, with new records and live shows proving as popular as ever. On this edition of Young Again, I am speaking to Pete Doherty. Welcome.
Hello. Good
It's
afternoon.
very nice to see you.
Lovely to see you, Kirsty.
I think you look well.
Yeah, I'm okay. I'm all right.
The premise of the programme is for us to have a conversation, and at points in that conversation for us to look back and say, what advice would you give yourself, given what you know now, given the wisdom you have now. I'm imagining that you are somebody who's been given quite a lot of advice by other people over the years. How are you at taking advice?
I think I'm generally open-minded, conversationally, anecdotally. I welcome advice. Whether or not I act on it is different, but this reminds me, I think, of the kind of exercise that I've done in treatment centres where I'd find myself in a treatment centre, a court-ordered detox or something like that, and they'd ask you to write a letter to your younger self. And I always had a lot of difficulty with this. I could never get past the emotional barrier of just imagining myself young and so far removed from that world that you didn't yet know about addiction.
Yeah.
That was always quite a dramatic thing for me. I think I generally would just burst into tears. Even like picturing myself, as a 9-year-old or a 15-year-old was quite difficult for me in that state. Now, I think I could probably do it without bursting into tears. Yeah, so let's go on.
Okay, let's see how we go. What do you make of this? I was going to say new life you're living, but of course it's always been your life. But as an outsider, I look at you. You have a wife now. You have a 1-year-old daughter. You're back performing. I heard you say on a television programme, this was around about a year ago, I think. You said it's almost as though I'm in shock at having got clean. Is it feeling slightly more comfortable now?
Yeah, it is. It is actually.
Or is it maybe it's not?
No, but for a long time it hasn't been. I mean, despite being free of opiates, it's not been, what was the word, comfortable. It hasn't been. You always sort of feel a bit like you're on a precipice. And so for a long time, I was taking blockers so that even if I did use opiates, they'd have no effect. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? That was the level to which I trusted myself. And probably the level to which I was trusted by people around me, particularly people who care for me.
And you're not anymore?
Well, it's funny because last night I came into London for the Libertines show tonight, and I would normally get that little tingle, and it'd be so easy as well. I would know, there's a dozen places I could go,
of course,
and get myself sorted out. But that seems to have passed. I mean, you obviously still got to be on your toes because it's a funny old thing, addiction. They used to say that when you get clean, your addict is just in the corner doing press-ups. I mean, it was like that image of
that's great. Yeah,
me,
that's great.
Yeah. For me, I was always imagined it like a chimpanzee in a 70s football kit. I don't know why. Just doing loads of press-ups, just saying, come on, son, come on, you'll be back. So this is progress, is what I'm saying. Slow progress. There was an element of shock in being clean because with the best will in the world, and I've had young children before, but that was never really a big part of their life. So I've made so many sacrifices for addiction, or lots of things offered up a sacrifice for my addiction, and the honeymoon period just seemed to last, and a lot of the delusion and the things that I thought I got from addiction I continue to get, but something has severed, a really strong tie has severed, and you're never, I think, completely free and clean. You know what I mean? I mean, you can be free and clean chemically, physically, but there was a reason you did that stuff, you know what I mean?
All Quiet on the Eastern Esplanade is the latest Libertines album. Reasons to Stay Alive and Not to Die at 25 was, of course, the line that absolutely jumped out at me. That's from the track Shiver. Are you surprised you're still here, living and breathing and walking around?
No, I don't feel surprised, no.
No.
Grateful,
Okay.
but not surprised. I don't know. I'm not entirely sure what the alternative is.
Well,
You know
I
what
only mean because you did all that and you
Yeah.
were very committed to it, and you so often. I'm talking, of course, I've never met you before. I'm a complete bystander to the coverage of your life. But there were times when I looked at you and I thought, he's not got long. That guy's not got long. That's what I mean. It's maybe an impertinent question, actually.
Yeah, no, because I understand what you're saying. It would be easy to make assumptions
Yeah.
about my health. They'd probably be accurate, but I think at that age, sort of like mid-20s, and just on this like celestial honeymoon period with psychotropic like discovery, I think I felt a kind of invincibility. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even though I was like taking it very close to the edge, foolhardily, waking up in prison and waking up in intensive care, and yeah, I suppose there must have been an element of that to it. But whether you're an addict and whether you push yourself like consuming these things or not, you age and you get old. You know what I mean? So maybe if I reach 50, regardless if I'm still clean or not, there'll be an element of surprise.
Okay.
But I mean, I said that to Louis III. I was going to say by 17th century standards, I've done quite well. But, yeah.
In everything that I see and read, and I've seen some very sort of chic photo shoots recently with you and your fellow frontman of the Libertines, Carl Barrett.
Carl Barrat.
Carl Barrat.
Circumflex on the second A.
Well, I know
Don't
there
you
is,
know?
but I heard Louis Theroux say Carl Barrett, so I thought if Louis saying it, I'm going to say it that way.
I corrected him, but they edited it out.
Well, we're not going to edit it out. I will say Carl Barrat.
His great-grandfather was a Victorian impresario, sort of strolling player,
Okay.
and they took out an R and a T and put a circumflex on the second A to give it that exotic
Very
feel.
nice.
So I thought if he went to the trouble to do that, we could.
You have
honour
a touch of the troubadours about you, I think. That sort of sense
that was always the dream. That's what
Was
we
it?
all, yeah, we sort of throw ourselves into music, into theatre, anything that utilised the creative energies, but not just writing music or writing scripts, but performing them, That was the dream, to be strolling players, go from town to town, telling our stories. I think that's what we managed to just about pull off and make a living from is performing on stage. You know what I mean? But our little kitchen sink playlets happen to be in song form, but we'd have taken anything. You know what I mean?
Do you think you would have had the success you've had as a performer and musician without him, or do you think it's the alchemy of that partnership that's been so important?
Yeah, no, I don't think it would have. I think without Carl, because from the moment I met him and those early years we spent together, so much hope was built up inside me that it was him and that we had something special and that we were going to do it together. That was, for me, it was everything. I don't think I'd have bothered otherwise, I had to think what would have happened to me.
What did you see in him then that you
I
didn't?
just saw this genius musician. He'd just pick up the guitar and it would just drip with, like, it'd be 1 second it'd be like delightful but quirky, whimsy notes, and the next minute it'd be like some dark, melancholy, like chord progression, and it all tied in perfectly to the lyrics I wanted to write and sing. And then he said, "No, you're not my singer. You'll have to learn guitar because I want to sing as well." So then I learned guitar and spent a lot of time chasing him around London, making him sit down and teach me guitar, and so all my hopes really were pinned on him because I believed in it so much, and I thought if I reckon this has got something worth believing in, and the world doesn't, then that's sort of sends askew my whole, like basically I'm I've got no sense of what can work and what can't.
If you could go back then to the start of that precious friendship, because anybody who has charted it over the years knows it's had its lows as well as its highs, and at times it's been a very fractious relationship. If you could go back and tell yourself something at the start of that precious friendship between the two of you, what would it be?
I really don't know. I'm really stretching my imagination and my historical perspective. I mean, first of all, what comes to mind first of all is silly things, but you might think I'm being facetious.
That's all right.
You know what I mean? I'd tell my younger self who's going to win the FA Cup or the Grand National.
Okay.
Make some wise investments.
No, makes sense.
Things like that. Warn him about future wars. I don't know. I don't know if there's a lot I could say. I think if I was to say, hold on, like you keep writing, you know, Rough Trade are going to sign you one day. I think he'd have just, like the young of me would just could, yeah, I know. Yeah. Because that was it for me, was to like write songs with Carl that inspired me and like captured my like imagination and made me dance and made me sing, and then get Rough Trade to sign us. That was always and for it to happen before I was 23. And if that hadn't happened, then nothing else really would have mattered, and I'd have probably become quite disillusioned. You know what I mean?
Tell me about this crackpot vision of England that you've spoken about before. That was your phrase.
I don't know if I think it's so crackpot. It's for all the triumph and magnificence and darkness of England and empire and post-imperial world. It's all there. This is it. This is England. We have, and I think I've got quite an international interest in music and literature. But I think England and Ireland as well, I'm talking about England, Ireland, Scotland, have set a very high benchmark for the world, like culturally, and in terms of everything else, it's just off the charts. You can't even begin to comprehend, you know, like things like the empire and slave trade, but it's all made England what it is today.
You've got a very sort of, direct kind of familial connection to that thing that for a lot of people sort of defines Britishness, which is the military. Your dad was in the Royal Signals. Was he a major in the Royal Signals?
My dad was, yeah, he's from a council estate in Paddington, and he joined the army at 18.
What was family life like? What are your memories of being young?
When I was very young, so like 0 to 13, 14, great, I think. We were like a little team, you know, this family unit.
Two sisters?
Going around, the older sister and the younger sister. Well, my younger sister was born when I was 7, so for a long time it was me and my elder sister. My mum, who was a military nurse.
You moved around a lot? A
lot. But as I say, we were this little unit, this team, going around wherever my dad was posted, we'd go to. So all the, you know, the usual army postings. A lot of time in Germany. You know, all the sort of the outposts of the crumbling, what was left of the British overseas, Gibraltar, Cyprus, Northern Ireland. And I think I can say in my mind anyway, I was really happy child. I think I loved the movement. I loved the sense of adventure. Right, where are we going next?
You did?
Do you know what I mean? Yeah. I think I really loved my mum and dad. I think I felt quite secure at home, you know?
Did you ever think about going into the military yourself?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you're not indoctrinated, but it's part of
the culture.
It's everywhere, isn't it? Everyone's in uniform, and the parade, the guns, the tanks. You're on the barracks. Most places we lived, we were on the barracks, surrounded by barbed wire. So I think so. I think I wanted to, probably till about 12 or 13.
And so you went to university. You went to university in London, and you were reading English.
Yeah.
You dropped out after a year?
I don't think I made it through the first year.
Okay.
Yeah, this was the days of grants as well. So I went straight from being on the army barracks to having like £7,000 grant, being, you know, let loose in London. In my mind, the course wasn't that stimulating. I couldn't really get to grips with Beowulf, and, you know, I just wanted to get straight into James Joyce. But actually, it was probably more. It was just like a kiddie in a sweet shop, you know, just hitting London hard, going out, and all the bands I'd sat in my bedroom listening to. I went out and tried to form.
What did they make of you dropping out of university?
I don't know, really. Actually, it's a really good question. I've got no idea. Probably, I mean, I imagine my mum would have been disappointed and my dad would have been angry, but by that time, I think I'd made my mind up about what I wanted to do, and was sure in my heart that I was going to commit to. I think writing. I wanted to dabble. I did a bit of performance poetry at the time, and trying to make a go of that. And I just felt with a bit more discipline, I could knuckle down and write a play or a novella.
I'm so surprised about that, because I would have thought, your dad being a major in the army, your mother's a military nurse, I would have thought they would have put a rocket right up your arse for dropping out of university.
I don't think we ever discussed it. I mean, everything happened so quickly then from me. Obviously, I'd already met Carl then at that time. I'd met him when I was still doing O-levels, and he knew my sister, and I was still at school when I met him. So when I came...
So you were like late teenagers, he's studying drama, you're studying English.
So I was like a heat-seeking missile on him when I came to London, and I was living in student digs in Whitechapel, in a big hall full of medics. And he'd come over there, and we wrote that line actually from Shiver about reasons to stay alive. But we wrote that one of those nights he came over. So that lyric's been there from even before we were called the Libertines.
Okay.
I mean, I still get a real shiver when I sing that line anyway, because there's always people in the crowd who that line connects with, and they always see like hands go up and for that line. So no, I'd already sort of was on his trail, and we'd already written a few songs, and then I just knew. I knew that this was something worth fighting for, worth dying for, and I was going to give it all I had, and that was it. I'd found it. The thing that the thing that makes you want to join the army or do anything. It really helps if you really believe in what you're doing. You know what I mean? If you believe you're fighting for the right side, and I believed I was, and that was it really. And I explained that to them. I think I said, look,
okay,
I'm starting a band with Carl, and we're going to make something of it, and it's going to be amazing. And I think I was just so matter of fact.
Okay.
And he said, okay, we'll play us one of your songs. So I played him this really early acoustic version of a song called What a Waster. And I remember he said, look, you can't sing, first of all, and you clearly can't write songs or play guitar. You're going to have to get your head cut and go and get a job if you... But 2 years later, that song had been released and was single of the week, and then when he seen it was single of the week in the NME, he was like, what's that song, What a Waster? And he made me go around to play it to the neighbour, and I was so fuming. I was like, no, I'm not playing it for the neighbour. You didn't like it when I played it to you. You only like it now because the NME said single of the week. No, you've shattered, you've disillusioned me forever. I'm going to become a heroin addict.
Funny. Speaking of that, you said you hit London hard. When did you start committing to drugs as part of a lifestyle choice?
I had no real connection to that world. It was so far removed from what I knew, and it was so exciting for me just to be out dancing in like my little leather jacket and eyeliner, and all these young kids from all over Europe all listening to the same type of music. It was all like Pistols and the Smiths, and people were doing speed, and all people, because nobody had any money. Everyone was on housing benefit and stuff like that. But maybe they put the club together, a couple of tenors, and get half a gram of coke. But for me, I didn't really need it. I was so buzzing on just being out, and it was just like 10 Embassy Light and a couple of bottles of beer. Really, that was it. And I couldn't even handle the beer that well. As Carl will tell you, he'd always point out that I was a complete lightweight, and he could never believe that I was known for excess when he'd grown up in squats and quite a troubled background. But there was always drugs around, I think, and he was always determined never to go down that road. But we were both there together, young men. We did a bit of coke together, and we had a good time. But for him, it was like, that's it. For me, it was like, right, what's the next thing? Oh, you wash the coke up, you smoke the crack, right? What? And I was just off, like literally a kid in a sweet shop. I mean, it's not even a metaphor. That's exactly what I was, and it was just And it all went hand in hand with this record deal and this sudden catapulted up into the music media consciousness. So we were off on tour for the first time, releasing records, and Carl could only tolerate it really for, I think we split up the first time after the first album. By the time we did the second album, we just managed to get that done.
I want to ask you, because I spoke to somebody recently I interviewed somebody recently who, he doesn't work with addicts anymore, but he did for a long time. And he said the first question that he would always ask somebody was, what do you get out of your addiction? And I'd never heard that before, and it struck me as a really interesting thing to be interested in. So I want to ask you that, because I think very often it's difficult for people on the outside.
I was getting so much out of life, out of London, out of all the people I was meeting, things I was doing, the drugs being part of it. I think I just started to associate with all the joy, all the new music I was discovering. Like that, when we first got that record contract, we spent it all on new instruments and records, basically, and we put the rest in cash in the fridge, and we'd iron it every morning. Right?
You'd iron the cash?
Yeah.
Because?
Just because it was ours, and we could if we wanted. Yeah. And everything, it's just all the things we'd always been looking through the shop window at, all the flash guitars and the amazing old suits and the places that, where we'd worked, but we would never go in as a customer. We could go or get a box at the theatre, little things like that. It was all amazing enough, but for me, it just went hand in hand with the other stuff, with my with all the drugs, basically.
So that just it kind of heightened the amazingness of it.
And it was just there. And I was young. There was people around me. I mean, there was a few old junkies who sort of who you had to have around to know where to get the good stuff. But basically, it was like a band of lost kids. You know what I mean? We were all living on top of each other, and Carl got sick of that, and he moved out. And we lived together. We'd always lived together till then. He moved out and left me with the Lost Boys, basically, and that became Baby Shambles. And then I was then in a band with people who had similar proclivities. Is that the word?
I think it is.
Yeah.
And if you could go back then, that's funny.
There are things I would say to myself. Yeah. Sorry to interrupt you, but it's what's in my mind. I'd say I can imagine myself looking at myself saying this, but say just get some sleep, man. Just get some sleep from time to time. You know what I mean? Just get your head down, get some sleep, because that was always where things would go seriously wrong. 2 or 3 days up, and then stupid things, like criminal things where you really don't know what you're doing. I mean, I had a slight problem with hallucinations anyway when I was a child. I had a head injury, and I got taken to hospital with this head injury. I was hallucinating, and this ball of string kept coming after me, and it would keep coming back. And there's another one where all these numbers would come into my face, like I could taste it. They thought it might be epilepsy, but it's not.
Okay.
And after a few days without sleep, I'd get that same thing.
Okay.
The digits, and I'd just keep pushing it further and further. So that's one thing, sleep. Maybe I'd actually just tie myself up, put him in the boot, take him out to a forest, and give him some tough love, actually. Yeah, in fact, I wouldn't even offer any advice. I'd just say, this is for your own good, I think.
Stay away from that scene, stay away from those people, do you mean?
No, it's not about people or scenes. I was as bad as everyone else. It was just be kind to yourself every now and again. Get some sleep, for God's sake, because all the serious things that went wrong, like where I end up in jail or end up missing concerts, and when things went serious. So I missed a concert at the Astoria because I was so freaked out. I won't even tell you where my head was. It was so weird. You probably wouldn't believe me, but I ended up sitting in a taxi outside the venue, not going in, while the people who paid to see the concert, who are now being told to go home, they tore the place apart, and there was loads of people battered because they attacked security took them back, and all this riot going on. I'm just in the back of the taxi, like thinking that, not as. I mean, it was in quite a peaceful state, but I was really hallucinating. You know what I mean? It was on like ketamine and crack, and so things like that could have. But I don't know if you can avert it. Or I don't really want to tamper with history. I've always been really confused about this question about advice to my younger self.
Because you think you wouldn't take it, or because you think that's
it just seems to upset me somehow. Thinking of my younger self, I don't know. Also, probably I'd end up just like I'd end up going, oh my God, yeah, you were minted back then. You had the world at your feet. I'm coming with you, mate. It's like, fuck the advice. I'm coming with you for a couple of nights. You know what I mean? You know, because it wasn't. I mean, there were dark moments, but it wasn't all dark. It was a lot of laughter. Oh, the laughter! How we laughed.
I've mentioned this already to those of us on the outside, because I'm very conscious in talking to you. You know, I have a very, I obviously, along with most of the rest of the population, consumed a lot of the tabloid headlines about you and the front page stuff.
Yeah, but that's some really dark, twisted stuff. I mean, if I had a half-decent lawyer at the time, I'd be minted. Some of the things they wrote.
I'm sure. I'm thinking of you in those high glamour moments. You know, I'm thinking about the Kate Moss years. I'm thinking about the two of you kind of cutting a dash through rock and roll society.
That was the only reason they were. I was in that. I was in their lens anyway. Was because I was with Kate. Before I was with Kate, I was never in the tabloids. Maybe on page 27 about a gig, or maybe they'd actually write about music. It was only when, because of her profile, I got sucked into that. So.
And what's it like on the inside, when you're on the inside of that?
Well, I was banging love. I was like head over heels in love, and just having a proper knees up really, and thought it was a sacrifice worth making. I thought it was a hit worth taking. But she was the opposite. She was like, "This will not be tolerated. I spent years building up a profile. You're not gonna throw all my hard work away." And I was like, all right, I'll be good. And then the next night, you know, it'd be the same again. It'd be like, you know, drugs or fisticuffs or something, or pay some local kids to smash the glass of the paparazzi's car, and then they just come back the next day and write an even worse story. So that doesn't work. Can't really beat these people. They're like it's a bit like a virus. There's nothing sporting about it. There's no rules to it. It's just, how can we make this sound as bad as possible to sell more papers? And it would, to me, I'd be like, I know what to do. I'd write an amazing song that's going to be so beautiful and melodic that they'll have to write about the song, but they never did.
Funny that.
Right.
Are you a very romantic soul?
If it's not romantic to call yourself a very romantic soul, then yes, I am. But if it is, no, you understand.
I know,
what
I understand what you mean. Yeah, I understand.
Are you a romantic soul?
As I get older, I'm more romantic, I think. Probably I'm more tender. I'm moved more to tears, to see things more. Yeah, as I get older. I think when I was younger, I wasn't really.
Really?
Yeah, I've done it the wrong way round, have I?
I don't know. I don't think it must have been in you all along. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's the kids thing, probably. That's made me more wistful and romantic, having kids, I think, probably.
Brought out maybe a bit of the child in you.
Maybe.
Did you have a happy childhood?
Mostly. Yeah, mostly I did. Yeah, a lot of laughter. A lot of laughter. That's what I remember from my childhood. But yeah, mostly. I mean, anyway, we're here to talk about you, obviously. During that time of the nuts fame and the nuts tabloid life and the nuts drug habit, and it all sounding like a very, very big life indeed, did you see your family much? Did you see your parents much? Is that the wrong way to describe it? It's just that's how it sounds. Sounds nuts.
Well, anything can be presented as nuts, but my was elements of the chaos I enjoyed, but with being in a band and rock and roll, in inverted commas, it's kind of staged chaos anyway. I'd never really been that much of it, I was never sort of prison material or like, but it was always seemed to be lots of violent things happening suddenly, and I'd end up swinging when I never used to. I used to be able to walk away or take an insult, but I used to end up standing up to myself. So I'd get myself in scrapes. That sort of stuff was nuts. But generally, especially with the heroin, it was peace and quiet. You know what I mean? And sanctuary and solitude that I was seeking. Do you know what I mean? And so away from the cameras, like with Kate, where she had a country place or she could go to some island, it was always like that. Chaos was out there, and then you'd have flashes of violence, but it was a sanctuary. Do you know what I mean? It'd be like Harvest, the Neil Young album, Harvest, slow Sunday country ballads. That's what I think of when I think of those times, really.
Wow,
you
okay,
know?
That's really interesting.
But that's why I did it, really, as well. That cocoon, force field type feeling you get from heroin, you know what I mean? Which gave me an island of solace amidst the chaos. I mean, that's what... I can see myself sat by a massive log fire, you know what I mean, in an old upholstered chair, in front of a four-poster bed, you know, with like Louis XIV drapes and carved bedposts, with my little guitar, always a nylon string guitar, just like lost for days, like with my little snuff box full of whatever. And that's how I like to picture. I don't like to picture, you know, the tabloid chases and the prison and all the lies. It's just it's kind of stain on the memory, but actually it's amazing now. They killed 99.99% of stains and bacteria. You can get it all out, you know what I mean?
Thank you for that. I want to ask about prison. Those short stints that you had in prison for, I mean, various things that you were sent to prison for, done for possession, sometimes violent things. How did you get on in prison?
Same as anybody else, really. Just boredom and frustration. It's very clinical.
Did it change you?
I think it took a bit of the wind out of me a little bit and toughened me up a little bit in a way that, you know, the sort of thing that my dad would always say, that I wasn't aggressive enough, do you know what I mean? Because he used to like to box and was quite a good footballer, and I was always a bit slow. That's the wrong word, but like that. Didn't want it, wasn't hungry, you know what I mean? Wasn't arsed. I didn't like fighting, But prison sort of twists your mind a bit. It twists your outlook. It builds up pressure. There's no outlet. And so people start to enjoy just any type of action, you know what I mean? Whether it's like someone's got a new pair of trainers or there's something silly to fight about. You just... Otherwise, violence, it always like... Just wasn't that interested. It wasn't that good at it. I think maybe it just toughened me up a bit for a little while. I think I went a bit mad because of it. Like, it was so distorted in some ways. It's this constant barrage of noise, and I mean, I don't really know what I'd do if I had to go in for a long period of time. I don't know. Like, then again, there was moments of like, if you got a cell on your own and you get a radio, just kick back, listen to the radio. I remember that for a little while. I had a cell on my own. They put me in solitary, and I remember having a radio and just lying on my bed, listening to the radio. They were doing a serialisation of Jekyll and Hyde, I remember, and I was like, God bless Radio 4. Yeah.
Here's to that.
And I stood by him ever since.
I wonder about somebody, I think very wisely, once said to me, you know, you can't have a proper relationship with somebody who's a drug addict because they already have a very big relationship in their life.
Yeah, interesting that. Yeah.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, and so this is, I think, this was the crux of it for me, because everyone that I loved and who loved me, my family and Carl, who knew me before I even knew what drugs were, they saw me change and couldn't have a relationship anymore. Like, my dad didn't want to know me, my mum was heartbroken, distraught. Carl couldn't be in a band with me, didn't want to know me. And I was like, but I'm still here, it's still me. And they were like, yeah, it's not you. And that's what really, really threw me. I think it took me years, it took me about 5 years to recover from the shock of hearing and being so offended, like I was so like, mortified. Oh, it's not me. And then I was like, well, all these people, they love me, they love and trust me, they believe me, and yeah, but they were people you did drugs with. But I'm in a relationship now, right, with a woman who I did know her when I was using, but I never used with her because she never took drugs. But I never discussed this with her. I don't think I should do, because she made a documentary about my addiction, but it'd been into the question. But I like to think she saw something in me, even when I was using, and that's when we fell in love, and she fell in love with the person she saw, and then just waited for him to come out when I was clean, and is still, hoping that I can, stay clean and be that person.
That's quite an extraordinary thing, I think.
Yeah. But it was very annoying at the time, I think, in active addiction, hearing that. It really was like it used to hit me right in the gut when people would say, you've changed, because I'd be like, because I really didn't feel like I had. It's a very selfish activity, isn't it? I think when I stopped, when I stopped injecting, and was using less, and it was obvious I was trying at least trying to make a change and be better, that even if it didn't work the first time, then people offered me some, like Carl said, okay, well, we can see each other, and my dad said, right, well, you can come home. And then when I stopped using crack and heroin completely, he was like, right, well, now you can, we can talk, and we can even dare talk about the past, and apologise.
How is your relationship now with your mum and dad?
I like to think it's better than ever, really, I adore them, really. I love them. I think they're two amazing people. And Billy May as well, I think, and Katia.
That's your wife and your little daughter.
Yeah, they made a lot of difference. I think my dad looks at them and thinks, oh, maybe he's not completely useless. Like if he can, if Katia wants to be with him and raising Billy May, she's an amazing little girl, maybe he's not completely hopeless. You know what I mean? What
do you think we, the people who are on the outside, get wrong about drug addiction? What do you think? Because there'll be loads of people. I mean, we've all got, whether it's family members or friends or, it's in all of our lives in one way or another. Either it's happened to us or we know somebody well who it's happened to. What do you think people misunderstand about it?
I wouldn't like to say. I wouldn't like to judge anyone.
It's not a judgment. I'm just interested in.
I don't know if people really understand the grip. It's not. But then again, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I don't know if it's the same for everyone. But for me, I didn't feel like I had a choice.
Okay.
Really, and it could have been anything. It didn't. Obviously, there's some extremes you could point to, like life and death situations. But it got to a point where I didn't care. Nothing. You've got a gig. If you don't do this gig tomorrow, you're going to get sued for 200 grand. And I'd just say, you know what I mean? And then I'd spend years paying lawyers' fees for cancelling festivals and things, or just in that moment, you really do not care. I think that maybe it's a devilish thing. Maybe it is the devil. But we just call it different things. It's a malevolent influence that can creep in and take over, and it can take your soul. You don't care about the things you do or the things you're party to, even if it's just happening in the corner of a crack house, and you think like, that's not right. I've got to get in and out. Yeah. That might haunt you for years. You know what I mean?
Are you haunted still?
Some things haunt me, yeah, but probably we all are haunted
There is some notorious CCTV footage from 2006 of you walking past the body of a young man. His name was Mark Blanco. He had fallen from his death from a block of flats after being at a party that you were at. The circumstances in which he very sadly lost his life are disputed. Do you still think about that night?
Well, I think about it when it comes up, questions like this. And I do think about it from time to time, yeah, of course. It's frustrating for me, really, because the facts are disputed, but not by anybody that was there. Everybody who the police have spoken to was in there all agree that the door was bolted with Mark on the other side, okay? And he didn't fall from the flat, okay? He fell from the landing of the stairs, okay, which is outside the flat. There's a stairwell that led up to the tenement. You know what I mean? So I'm in the flat, and someone shouted up, "Someone's dying on the street, call the police." So we called the police, and of course the police had come in, and it's a crack house. You know what I mean? I've got loads of drugs on me. I'm in and out of court all the time then. The last thing I want is to see the police. So I didn't walk past a dying man. I ran past a dying man. Yeah.
As I say,
I didn't throw him out of a window off a balcony. No, I didn't kill him. What do you want me to say? You know?
I don't particularly want you to say much because it's in the public domain and because I'm interviewing you. I mentioned it, but we're not. We're going to move on to other subjects.
Yeah, no, this is the thing. You can't move on from things like that because there's people who loved Mark and who miss him that can never move on.
Yeah,
because they've got it fixed in their head that they're missing a piece of information that I know. No, I'm missing the same information. I mean, no one knows for sure what happened to him, but I know for sure he didn't fall from inside the flat, and he wasn't in the flat when he fell. He was on the stairwell, and he'd been locked out of the flat. That's all I know. You know what I mean? And that's all I can keep repeating.
You moved from Margate, and I'm wondering why you left. Why do you live in France now? Why did you leave?
I don't know. It seems so long ago now. I think I'd hit sort of the lowest point I could hit. I think in terms of my addiction, I was proper clinging on. I mean, my body was absolutely battered. And it was one particular moment. So I was supposed to be the caretaker of the hotel that we were hoping to open, the Libertines. Well, we did eventually, but at the time it was just an empty building. So I was living there with all my stuff. And after trying to get clean and being clean for a bit, I'd proper hit Margate underworld hard. I was kind of lost, clinging on. And then Carl just said to me, he came and stood over me. And I sort of got back into addiction and back into banging up and injecting. And he stood over me, and normally he would never even be in the same room or the same building. He could never watch me do it. And he came in and I had the needle in my arm, and he just said something along the lines of, I won't tell you exactly what he said, but something along the lines of, cannot do this anymore, can't keep trying and failing. Either this stops or that's it. There's no more. We can't do this. We can't do the hotel. We won't be able to open the hotel. We won't be able to do the Libertines. And that was it, really. I think that's the last time I had a needle in my hand, and something just hit me then. I thought I'll give it another go. I went and got clean, and then I got a blocker, an opiate blocker. But I found every time I go back to Margate, it was too. I mean, a lot of the people I was messing around with then, unfortunately, they're dead. It was 3 or 4 deaths in real quick succession. People I was really close to. And I haven't lived there since then, really. And every time I go back for short periods. Well, I don't know. There's a bit of a big question, that, actually. There's still there's a fast image reel going through my head of all these grotesque scenes in phone boxes and in the beach down the beach in washed up containers from sunken container ships at 4 a.m. But the good news is the pandemic happened.
Yeah.
And I went to a little village in Normandy and stayed there, really. We got married and had a baby.
And along with the baby and the marriage is a solo album coming out.
We've been back to Margate. We go back to Margate quite often
as
a family, but I can feel the sort of frisson of my wife. She doesn't like me to be there. You know, I think I think it was a low point in our relationship as well, me being there.
Yeah.
So yeah, Pete Doherty solo album, April 2025. All the songs that weren't good enough for the Libertines album or were too good for the Libertines album, they're put on that. I don't know what to call it. I was going to call it If You Can't Fight, Wear a Big Hat, or Felt Better Alive, which is one of the standout tracks on the album. I think we're going to call it Felt Better Alive, actually, yeah.
Okay. Does it feel exposing having a solo album, doing it without the people that usually surround you?
Not really, no. There's loads of like amazing musicians I've worked with before. I mean, it's not my first solo album. I mean, if anything, less exposing. Sometimes the Libertines, there's more compromises you have to make. Maybe it's really still, we do slower songs, but it's still very upbeat. Just sometimes just playing acoustic stuff, solo stuff, it's just like going, you know, and it's more about, you can actually hear the lyrics as well, like, whereas at the Libertines gig, people know them, it doesn't matter if they can hear them or not, everyone sings them, and whereas it's just a bit more European, so
What's been the biggest learning? What's been the thing that you think, you're in your mid-40s now, right?
my lord.
Yeah, fancy that. That you think, that I've got that, I'm putting that in my back pocket for the future. I've learned that much about life.
What's the thing that I think about and think, I'm glad I've got that in my back pocket?
Well, you know, don't you think there are things that, you know, you think, okay, I didn't understand that 25 years ago, but I get it now.
Yeah, but it sounds really silly. It sounds a bit silly to say it. So,
is it?
Yeah. A little bit. Like bricks and mortar, basically. I can really see now the power, the feeling of having your own place, your own space. That's just feels so important. Whereas in the past, I always said I don't believe in private ownership of property. So I'm having a bit of a philosophical wrangle.
I don't think that sounds silly. So you mean somewhere that feels like home, that you know it's your place?
Owning a property, you know what I mean? You can put a fence around it, and if anyone comes, you set the dogs on them. You know, that's, you know, don't mean to phrase it like that, but you see my point, you know?
The safety of something.
Place that's your own. Whereas I used to be really against private ownership of property, while there's anyone who doesn't have a roof over their head. So, but I think being responsible for a child and you just get that feeling of I want to build a nest. Not even a nest, like a castle. Yeah.
Well, I hope the album sells well then, for the castle. Thanks very much for taking the time, Pete Doherty. It's been very interesting to talk to you.
All right.
Young Again is a BBC Studios audio production for BBC Radio 4, presented by me, Kirsty Young. It's produced by Mark Ward, with additional production by Luke McGregor. The editor is Mugabe Turia. The commissioning editor is Rianne Roberts. Subscribe to Young Again on BBC Sounds.